I grew up with a single mom, and she had a business, and it was very successful in Mexico. And o sea, this is back in the day when there's no coaching, there's no business coaching, you're just kind of like doing it one foot in front of the other. And I'm an eldest daughter, and so I always wanted to get in the business with my mom. And she was always like, no, your job is to go to school. And she never gave me a job. And I was like so upset. And I started working, actually, I asked her friend who had another business to give me a job. I was 13 years old. And the friend was like, yeah, I need to go. And so I started working when I was 13, but it wasn't for my mom because she didn't let me. And then when I grew up, I got an opportunity to coach immigrant women. And I found so much affinity with them, so much just compassion, and I wanted to give them everything. And that's when I realized adult me became the coach my mom at some point needed. Because now, while I couldn't help my mom and give her the resources, now I have the language, now I have the resources, now I have the cultural background to talk to them, and it's how it happened. Well, Own Your Voice and Step Into Your Power, all of my work is rooted in Calladita Culture. And Calladita Culture, I have been working on Calladita Culture for over a decade. I would say my whole life, but we'll start with a decade. And I first started with principles. I call them principles, and there were 7. And now we're down to 5, and there are 5 wounds of Calladita Culture. And so Calladita Culture is the belief that we are instilled in how women are socialized. I always come from the Latina perspective because that's who I am. Of calladita te ves más bonita. You look prettier when you're quiet. And so Own Your Voice is rooted in the wound of silence. And the wound of silence is the wound that keeps you either quiet or too loud. The Stand in Your Power is when we explore the wound of silence to see where are you. And it's kind of like a spectrum in a way. I'm neurodiverse. I have ADHD, so I love spectrums because I don't think anything is super linear. And so the wound of silence, we go and we see, are you not speaking up? Are you not asking for more? Are you letting other people talk over you? Or are you on the opposite end where people have to tell you to tone it down? And maybe you've been told you're too loud. Or, there's different spaces, and we do a lot of exercises where you find kind of where you toggle, and then exercises to help you stand in your power, which is your truest version of you without having to prove yourself for others. It's for yourself. So it's always, we bring it back to what is the truest version of you that's the most authentic, unapologetic, without hearing the noise of someone else telling you need to be less. Let's Thrive is a fun workshop I typically do Thrive, and Thrive is an acronym. And so, again, because I love working with frameworks, and I create very easy systems, and people tell me all the time that I just kind of break things down in an easy way. And I'm like, listen, because my brain is thinking about a lot of things, so I need to make it the simplest way possible. So Let's Thrive, it's all about uncovering where you are, what's your bandwidth, and understanding how you work best. Because we also live in a world, I am a woman, I am a human who bleeds every month, and so I understand that my body cycles in a very different way. I cycle with the moon. Cis men, they cycle with the sun, which means that they recover much faster. And so the Thrive is a methodology in a way that helps us explore where are you, what's your capacity, what works, what doesn't work, and how could you actually create a space where you can thrive instead of feeling like you're just chasing the next thing, because that's what we've been socialized to do. It's chase the success, get the check mark, all the things, but what is actually good for you? That's what we explore and Thrive. When I started my business, actually, almost 10 years ago, I read all, I did all the business classes, and nothing resonated. And I'm like, well, that's because I have ADHD. My brain is just not like with that very linear aspect of it. And so I started kind of like creating my own thing. I started exploring other ways of planning things. And that's when I started. My whole business is around my cycle and the seasons of the earth. And so I realized that I was working with women, and every human really, not just women, how disconnected they were from their bodies, and how that disconnection didn't allow them to fully understand what they wanted, where they wanted to go, because they were like out there in a different world. And so create a harmonious work culture where all talents in your team can thrive. It's such a mouthful. Is where I work with teams to explore who is part of the team, how are they cycling, and could we create and work around not just their I call them inner seasons. So just like we have 4 seasons of the earth, we have 4 seasons in our cycle. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. Then you work around that. Because there's actually a study with a soccer team in England, and they started training the team based on their cycle. And something they noticed is that they had less injuries, they increased performance, and everyone was just much happier. And of course they switched. I'm sure at some point everyone was synced, but everyone was doing different trainings depending on where their cycle was. And they actually thrived. And so that's me reading that article is what inspired that workshop, because I'm like, if a soccer team of women can thrive by working with their inner seasons, why can't workplaces? Yeah, your identity is your superpower is also, there's a wound of identity. And the wound of identity is the one that either you're overlooked or all you talk about is your identity. And so your identity is your superpower is also, that one is mainly for first gens, for those firsts in their family, eldest daughters, children of immigrant, first in their family to go to college, all the firsts. Because we tend to take an identity based on what others, especially children of immigrant, we want to make them proud. It's like the infamous story of I became a lawyer because my dad wanted me to be a lawyer, but you don't really want to be a lawyer. So it's really uncovering what is your true identity without the noise of whoever expects you to be, and also taking on the various roles that we take. Because I have clients, for example, who are very successful, and they're only that, they are the doctor. And about you being like a sister. And it's really hard to take that hat, that persona off, because they've embodied the successful one so much that it can't get them to be anything else. And so your identity is your superpower. Is how do we peel all the pieces of who you are and blend them into one, so you can be super proud of who you are without being questioned. Also, the people that que no hablan español, that they feel like there's this narrative that's been going around, like, are you Latina enough or whatever? Everyone is enough. And so your identity is your superpower. We uncover, how do you give yourself permission to feel plenty? And I use a lot of somatic tools. So we work a lot with the body, because we tend to be in our head so much. And so when we bring ourselves back to the body, then you're able to fully feel, because we also are trained not to feel.